So this is the Exploring PLDB webinar. It's a webinar over the next kind of 20 minutes or so, which will just give a very broad introduction to the prospects and leads database that we've created here at Petrosys. But if there are other questions, then please do get in touch with us. My email address is on the screen here, and we'd be more than happy to set up more specific in-depth webinars to address your specific problems if we need to. So I'm going to start with 2 or 3 slides just to introduce what PLDB is, and then I'll go into a live demonstration and I'll show you some of the key features. So what is PLDB? Well, it's an integrated web solution based on the PPDM database model, which helps meet strategic targets. Now, it does this in a number of ways. The first key thing that PLDB does is that it captures and stores companies' plays, prospects, targets, and drilling opportunities. So it's an easy way to store all of your information about your petroleum portfolio. It also captures the uncertainty associated with the plays or the targets or the hydrocarbons or the economic factors associated, again, with those portfolio parameters as well. The tool also allows you to stochastically estimate the results for gas, oil and other liquids to give probabilistic outcomes. So it's not just feeding in deterministic values, it also has some mathematics to do the Monte Carlo simulations as well. Now, a few of those points, those first 3 points, you'll find in other packages that are in the that are out in there in the industry that do things like Monte Carlo simulations. They might do them on spreadsheets. They might do them attached onto some other software. Where I think PLDB really differentiates itself is in the fact that it is a very robust database that the model is built on. So you can do things like historical comparisons and version management, which is something that is extremely difficult, pretty much impossible if you're using isolated spreadsheets to do all of your kind of portfolio management work. However, we do see clients using spreadsheets, and we do see them struggling along to look at things like historical comparisons or version management. You know, if somebody's gone into a spreadsheet, updated some values, in a year's time you're looking at that particular prospect and you're trying to work out why they've made those changes, it's really difficult to do, and it can lead to a lot of problems. The real value of having this robust PPDM database sitting behind all of your portfolio is that you can very easily see what's been changed last year versus this year. You can look at who made the change, what they did, why they made that change. So that kind of historical comparison version management is very important. The fact that it's in a database also allows us to compare and contrast different prospects, plays and portfolios. So if you imagine you're trying to decide which prospect you want to drill this year, or which play you want to divest and focus on, or as part of your portfolio management. Being as part of this database, we have dashboard views. We can view the data in maps. We can do roll-ups to accumulate all of the volumes for particular plays. So we can do all of these things because it's part of this database. Very easy to query, very easy to display and get at the data we're looking at. So it gives them effective knowledge management as well. Effectively empowers all geoscientists to provide and justify opinions in a consistent manner. As we'll see in the live demo, when you are creating prospects, there's a set of steps you have to go through to create it. So everybody is doing the same thing. Everybody's using the same sort of terminology, the same numbers, looking at the same parameters, which therefore makes it much easier to compare and contrast different prospects. And ultimately, this sort of consistency allows us to make the best decisions about which of our opportunities we want to invest in. So the value of PLDB then, well, as I mentioned in the previous slide there, it implements a sort of team process for this continuous assessment and consistent assessment of petroleum resources. So it improves the consistency of prospect evaluations and accountability of the resource statements. It builds on existing corporate workflows, and extends on preferred established algorithms. Now, the point of adding that little bit there to the slide is to say that we're fairly familiar with working with companies who already have some existing algorithms in place. They all maybe already have existing workflows in place for this type of work. With the PLDB, it's quite a customizable tool, so we can essentially build on top of those existing workflows, and we can add in your own custom algorithms into the model. So it's not just a case of starting from scratch. We're trying to build and enhance your workflows rather than completely replace them. There's also the ability to respond to what-if queries based on alternative interpretations. So I'll show you the options in PLDB to have different scenarios. Perhaps if you're buying an asset from a different company, they might have viewed that asset in a different way. So you can include their scenario versus your scenario to look at those different results. You can integrate resource assessments with exploration programs and development outcomes. So PLDB kind of works right from the exploration phase right through to production and field development. It's easily distributed through secure access through a contemporary web interface, and I'll show you that in the demonstration. So whether the database is hosted on the cloud, such as the data set I'm using today, or whether it's hosted by a server within your office, the interface that we use is through a web interface, which makes it very easy to use. There's really a sort of very low learning curve to use the tool itself. You can analyse the history of past assessments to improve future predictions, so doing things like post-drill analysis, looking at last year's portfolio versus this year's portfolio, seeing where you made the mistakes, trying to improve the quality of your work going forward. You can do all that in PLDB. And it's built on 20 years of Petrosys' knowledge in this particular data management space. So PLDB itself is a 20-year-old tool. However, for the early parts of its life, PLDB was a tool that was only available to one particular client. More recently, we've completely modernised it, refreshed the interface, and essentially built a new tool based on all of those years of experience, but we've made it available to the wider market. Okay, that's enough sort of talking in the PowerPoint. Let me jump into a live demonstration of the software, and I'll show you how all of these bullet points come together then. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is look at the web interface. Now, before I get started, I have to log into the system. So I'm going to do that just now, and I'll just make sure this password is hidden, which it is, and I will log in here. Now, the reason I wanted to show you that, and that's a bit worrying if that's, let's hope I've just typed that in correctly. There we go, that was it. That got me a little bit worried there. Now, so I've logged in successfully to the DBMap web database. And the reason I wanted to show that login part is to show you that different users have to log into the system with different privileges. And that's a very important thing for kind of version management and quality of the system. Obviously in spreadsheets it can be a bit more difficult to ascertain who's been logging in and who's been making changes. Within this system here, you can actually control the privileges that different people have. And when I've logged in here, I have access to all of the DBMap database options. And if you go to our website, you'll see another presentation on all of these parts. So things like looking at data within the map view. So we can view all of our wells, all of our seismic data. You can also view the prospects and leads within this option. You can view all of the basins, fields, permits, facilities, GIS data, as well as querying the records tied to some of these options. You can view all of this within DBMap. What it is that I'm talking about in this particular webinar is the prospects and leads option. So I'm just going to jump to this tab now and focus on the prospects and leads option. And I'm going to start by doing a sort of high level look at all of the prospects that our company has access to. And in total, we have access to 52 prospects. So you can see straight away that the advantage here is that all of the information is stored in this one place. So rather than working with cumbersome spreadsheets, you can see that all of my company's prospects are stored nicely in this one area here. So very easy to view, very easy to query through these, very easy to be consistent with how they're actually created. And in terms of creating the prospects and leads, we can do sort of bulk loading, or we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can customize on top of your existing workflows such that when one part of your workflow is finished, we very easily push the prospects into this database automatically. However, if you want to create prospects on an individual level, there are wizards that help you do this. So you can see if I go into this option here, I get this nice wizard that helps me go through step by step exactly how to create a prospect. So if I was creating a new prospect and click start, it would then tell me the exact parameters I need to fill in, things like prospect name, which basin it's in, which country the prospect's in. So it's very easy to be consistent because these wizards effectively tell me exactly how I'm supposed to set this up. Now I'm just going to exit this. I'm not going to create a prospect just now. But I'm going to start to drill down a little bit more into my list of prospects and look at an individual one. Now to do that, I can come over on the left and I can just start to filter based on some parameters. So I'll just filter and look at all of my prospects in Tunisia. So you can see it's very easy to use this web interface, very easy just to click on some buttons. There's no real sort of coding or scripting needed here. So I'm looking at all of the prospects for Tunisia and I'm going to click on this particular one called the Delta Lead. And you can see that it gives me a high-level view of or high-level summary rather of what's in the Delta Lead. So the name, for example, the fact it's a current prospect, it's in Tunisia. Our company owns 85% of this particular license block. There may also be information such as infrastructure or what seismic's available, things like economics. So in this case, I need a minimum find of 10 million barrels to make this prospect economic. I've also got a resource summary, and I'll come back to this in a moment. So actual numbers associated with this prospect. And we can do things that look at the map view so we can see exactly where this prospect is in space. And when this map refreshes, you can see, if I zoom out, you can see we're offshore Tunisia here in the Mediterranean. Now at this stage, I'm going to just jump out of the web interface very quickly because I know some people on the call are Petrosys Pro users, and I'm just going to show you how we can actually use this data in Petrosys Pro. So I'll jump to a little portal that I've got here, which will let me show you this in Petrosys Pro. And what you won't have as a Petrosys Pro only user is when you go to display, you won't see this option called prospects. But as a PLDB user, I can also display my prospects and leads and my drilling opportunities. And if I zoom into this particular map here, you'll see that I'm currently displaying the Delta Lead as well as some other prospects that my company own. So the value here really is that the prospects are linked to maps, they're spatialized. So unlike spreadsheets where it's very difficult to view your prospects, it's very easy to display these onto a map view. And you can also do the usual things you can do with Pro, so you can push this into different formats, as well as use the spatial editor to actually draw the prospects themselves. What you can also do from Pro is you can query the prospects and leads and you can edit them from in here. So if I click on edit, you'll see what it launches is essentially a web interface within the Petrosys Pro application where I can edit things like the prospective resources or look at the map view here or drill down into the target. So you can do all of that within Pro as well. However, I'm going to jump back to the web part of this. And I'm going to start to drill even further down into the Delta Lead. So we looked at the prospective resources very quickly. What I'm going to do is scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to start to drill down into the targets that make up this prospect. So this particular prospect, the Delta Lead, has 4 targets. So you can think of these as 4 reservoir zones or intervals which we're interested in drilling into to exploit for hydrocarbons. So these individual targets also have their own prospective resources, and I'll go into those in a minute. But what you can see is that this individual target has prospective resources. Those 4 targets that make up the prospect are then rolled up into to give me the number of the entire prospect, so the volume of the entire prospect. And later on in the demonstration, I'll show you how we can roll up the entire list of prospects to give me an overall set of figures for all of my prospects, either in Tunisia or in my entire portfolio. So you can see now I've drilled right down from all of the prospects down into one prospect, and we're now drilled right down into the 4 targets that make up this prospect. And within these targets, we can look at things like target dependency. So if one target fails, then it's more likely that another target will fail. We can do those sort of things. We can also look at prospect chronology or target chronology, depending on the level we want to look at. And if I click on target chronology, this is coming back to the point I made earlier, where everything you do is tracked in the database. So you can see that I can very easily see which changes were made to this target, going right back to 2013 when this target was first created. I can also see what changes were made to the volume of the target. I can see who made the changes, and then I can see why they made those changes here as well. So all of that information is clearly tracked in the database. We also have the concept of scenarios, which I spoke a little bit about earlier. So if you've bought this license from a different company, perhaps they believe there's a different scenario occurring for this target, you can compare and contrast the different scenarios. It might also be based on different interpreters as well. So having this scenarios option to look at different scenarios is very powerful. If I drilled into the prospective resources for this target, then you'll see that we've got some numbers down the bottom, and I'm going to click on the edit button to show you how we get these. And I will just stress again at this point that I only have access to the edit button because my tester login, this one up here, has privileges to edit the numbers. If I don't have that capability, then I won't see the edit button. And we can use different computational methods, so different resource types are catered for in here, so conventional oil and gas. If you have unconventional methods, shale oil, shale gas, for example, we have methods to deal with those. And we also have different range of computational methods for each of those resource types. So for conventional oil and gas, for example, I might choose the GRV method. And as I stressed earlier, if your company has particular calculations or algorithms that you are currently using to do reserves estimates, for example, we can add those into the database. So it's very customizable to add in custom calculations or computational methods. Now, at this point again, I want to just jump back to Pro once more, and this time I'm going to go to the surface modelling part of Pro. The reason being that one thing we added to Petrosys Pro recently was the probabilistic resource calculator. So all Petrosys Pro users have access to this PRC tool. And if I go into an example of this, you'll see that we have different computational methods, things like the GRB method, depth volume, depth area pairs, and we can vary different parameters within here. Now if I run this example, what you'll find as a Pro user, what is launched is effectively a PLDB cloud portal window. And when that opens up, I'll just show you roughly what that looks like. You'll notice that it looks essentially exactly the same as the full PLDB toolkit. So it's almost there. There we go. So it now populates this option here. Now, as a Pro only user, I have access to all the calculations, so I can vary things associated with the oil, the saturation, the expansion factors, for example. I can do things like probability factors, correlation, all of these sort of calculation parts that I can do within PLDB. The difference between Pro only users and Pro users who also have PLDB is that when a Pro only user is finished with these calculations, they compute the results and they export the results to a spreadsheet, and then it's up to them what they want to do with the Excel spreadsheet. As a PLDB user, when I've gone through my Petrosys Pro volumetrics workflow, I can then save these values straight into the PLDB database. Now these values then of GRB would come into the GRB part. I could then vary the values of porosity or whatever else it may be, and those are then saved within the database. So you can see the value here is that as a Petrosys Pro user, you have a very sort of succinct and slick workflow from mapping, from generating volumetrics to saving those volumetrics in a nice database to be able to query those volumes at a later date. Okay, so that's the calculation part. Let me cancel out of this, and what I'm going to do is, rather than being drilled right down into the target level, I'm going to step back up and I'm going to roll up some of these prospects. Now to do that, I go back to the prospects and leads option, and you'll find I have a roll-up tool. And if I click on the roll up tool, I'm able to roll up things like play, for example. So I will roll up all of the prospects I have within this particular play. I'll just click on compute. And there's other things we can put into here and different ways we can customize the roll-ups. But the point I'm trying to get across is that because all of my individual calculations that I've done are now in this robust database, it's very easy to view all of those in a cumulative view. So I'm now going to view all of the volumes for this particular play. And if I click on the summary, you can find that I have all of the volumes rolled up at the bottom here. And I can look at these in an unrisked, untruncated manner. I can risk the prospect based on some risking elements that we put into the target calculations. We can also include economic cutoffs to give us a truncated view, which is when you're assuming that what you might find might not be economic, so we might need to ignore it. So we get these 4 different results for the volumes. What you'll also notice as well is that you can click on these little images at the left, and you can view the individual values that went in to generate the P10, P50, P90 results, and you can include those images in reports as well. So that's the roll-up option. Another way to view all of your prospects is the dashboard view. So click on the dashboard view. And you can see that the value you have in these dashboards is that you get very easy to use informative dashboards that can be customized for them to be included as part of regular, let's say, monthly reports. So they might show all of your prospects split into different basins. You might want to view all of your total risked mean volumes based on different basins. You might want to look at your top 10 unrisked resources. You might want to look at your low risk resources, maybe your moderate risk or your high risk opportunities. So again, we can include these things in a dashboard view to make it nice and easy to view all of your portfolio. Okay, so that's the live part of the demonstration that I wanted to show. Let me just jump back to the PowerPoint, and I'm just going to go through one more slide just to check that I did actually cover all of the things that I wanted to. So in the example we ran through, we viewed all of the prospects and leads in our company. I think there was 52 in this particular company. We delved a little bit deeper into the Delta lead opportunity to get familiar with how the system's set up and how we actually generate these prospects. So we saw that there was a wizard to create new opportunities, and the fact that it takes you step by step through creating those. Of course, if you don't want to create prospects individually, as I mentioned earlier, we can either bulk load them into the system, or we can connect to ongoing processes you already have in your organisation. We saw the ability and the advantage of tracking changes through time, so history comparison, seeing who made the changes, why they made the changes, when they made the changes. We looked at the fact you can stochastically estimate results for gas, oil and liquid, so we saw some of the calculation parameters. We also saw that as a Petrosys Pro user, you now have access to that calculation part. It's just you need PLDB to store and manage the portfolio in a more robust way. We aggregated and enrolled a particular play, the Tanazooft anti-clown play, up into to a single portfolio using the roll-up tool. And we used the dashboard, and we understood that using the dashboard allows us to view the portfolio, and we can include the dashboard view in reports, making that part of the process much easier. So thanks very much for listening. I'm just going to come out of PowerPoint. I'm going to go back to the first slide in case anyone wants to contact me via my email address. And I'll also just unmute everyone now if anybody wants to ask any questions.